We see it all the time. A friend is struggling, and you know exactly what they need to do. You offer advice with such clarity and confidence, as if the solution is obvious. You speak with a sense of certainty, helping them navigate the fog of their emotions while you stand outside, detached above it all. They listen, and perhaps they are even grateful. But then you return to your own life, your own problems, and suddenly, that clarity vanishes. What once seemed simple in theory becomes impossible in practice. You tell yourself, I know what I need to do, but why can't I just do it? And that's where this psychological paradox begins. When you give advice, you're not in the thick of it. You're standing on the edge of the battlefield, pointing toward the exits. The irony is, if you were the one in the middle of the fight, those exits might not even be visible to you. You are able to maintain distance, viewing their dilemma as an outsider, detached from their inner turmoil. This distance is critical. The further you are from the problem, the more rational your thinking becomes. It's why you can look at a friend who's heartbroken and tell them they deserve better. It's why you can observe someone trapped in a toxic cycle and point out the patterns. But if it were your heart on the line, or your life caught in that same cycle, those patterns wouldn't be so clear. Your emotions would blur them. It's easy to be a wise observer when you're not entangled in the chaos. But when the storm is yours, you're just as blind as the person you've been advising. Here's where it gets even more complicated. Your mind plays tricks on you. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort we feel when our actions contradict our beliefs. For example, you might know you need to leave a toxic relationship, but you stay. Why? Because leaving would create emotional pain, and your mind is wired to avoid pain, even if it means staying in a harmful situation. Your brain will justify your actions to reduce the internal conflict, making excuses for why you're not acting on what you know to be true. With someone else's problems, you don't feel that same emotional discomfort. You're not the one facing the consequences of their choices, so there's no dissonance to navigate. The solution seems simple because you're not personally invested in it. But when it's your own life, every choice you make is a battle between what you know and what you feel. We're often far more critical of our own choices than we are of others. We see our flaws under a magnifying glass, while we offer others the grace of distance. It's like looking at ourselves in a distorted mirror. Everything is amplified. Our fears, our doubts, our insecurities, they all take center stage. When you give advice, you see someone else's situation objectively. You see their potential. You don't see the inner dialogue that holds them back. But when it's your own life, that inner dialogue is all you hear. You're intimately aware of your past failures, your patterns, your disappointments. You think, I've been here before. What if I fail again? This fear of failure can be paralyzing, making it impossible to act, even when the path seems clear. When advising someone else, you're not burdened by their past. You only see their present and their potential future. It's a much cleaner view, one free of the emotional baggage that weighs you down when you try to navigate your own problems. Let's take this one step further. Even when we know a change is necessary, the status quo can feel safer. Our habits, even destructive ones, offer a sense of security because they are familiar. Breaking out of them requires stepping into the unknown, and the unknown is terrifying. You might tell someone to quit their job because they're miserable, but you cling to yours despite your own unhappiness. Why? Because deep down, the idea of stepping into uncertainty feels riskier than staying in discomfort. This isn't rational, but it's human. We crave stability, even at the expense of our own well-being. We'd rather endure known pain than face the uncertainty of change. It's why you might tell someone to take a leap, but when it's your turn, you hesitate. And so, the cycle continues. You know what to do. You understand the problem. But the emotional, psychological, and even physiological barriers to action are far greater than you anticipated. We have an incredible ability to see the path for others while being blind to our own. The paradox lies in the way our minds process problems, distant enough to offer advice, yet too close to see our own struggles clearly. We're stuck in a loop of knowing and not doing, understanding the solution, but avoiding the pain of action. But why does this happen, and how can we break the cycle? When faced with a problem, your brain's first instinct is not to solve it, it's to protect you. This is where the concept of homeostasis comes in. Your brain is wired to maintain balance, to keep you safe in the familiar. Any action that disrupts this balance, even if it's positive, triggers a sense of danger. Change, in any form, is seen as a threat. That's why, when you try to take action on your own problems, whether it's quitting a job, ending a toxic relationship, or starting a new habit, your brain throws up barriers. It floods your mind with fear and doubt. This is the same brain that, just moments ago, confidently advised someone else to just do it. The difference is that your brain doesn't see their change as a threat, only yours. This protective mechanism can feel paralyzing. It's why even the smallest step toward change can feel monumental. Your brain creates resistance to maintain the status quo, even if that status quo is unhealthy or unproductive. In essence, your mind is working against your own best interests in a misguided attempt to keep you safe. This paradox isn't new. In fact, it's as old as humanity itself. Some of the greatest thinkers in history struggled with the same dilemma, knowing what to do, yet failing to act. They wrestled with the challenge of applying their own wisdom to their lives, and in doing so, they left us with powerful insights. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." His philosophy was built on the idea that self-reflection is the key to wisdom. But even Socrates, the master of introspection, acknowledged the difficulty of living in alignment with one's own knowledge. He believed that we must continuously question ourselves and our actions, but he also knew that true change comes not from knowing the right answers, but from embodying them. For Socrates, the struggle wasn't just about solving problems, it was about living authentically, in alignment with one's values. And that, he believed, was the hardest battle of all. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, often wrote about his own internal battles. Yet, despite his wisdom, Marcus struggled like the rest of us. He constantly urged himself to rise above his emotional impulses, to act according to reason. But even as an emperor, with the power to change the world, Marcus knew that controlling oneself was the greatest challenge. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's not the external problems that defeat us, it's the internal ones. The battle is within. Carl Jung, one of the pioneers of modern psychology, introduced the concept of the shadow self, the part of us that we suppress or deny. Jung believed that much of our suffering comes from our refusal to confront this shadow, the darker aspects of our own personality. We hide these parts of ourselves, avoiding the discomfort of self-examination. When we give advice to others, we're speaking from a place of clarity, but when it's our own life, our shadow interferes. We become blind to our own flaws and limitations because acknowledging them would force us to face uncomfortable truths. Jung believed that real growth comes from integrating the shadow, from confronting the parts of ourselves that we fear. This is why solving your own problems is so much harder than solving someone else's. Their shadow doesn't haunt you, yours does. At the core of this struggle is the fear of becoming. To solve your own problems, you must become someone different. You must change, and change by its very nature requires a leap into the unknown. Even when you know that change is necessary, the fear of what lies on the other side can be overwhelming. This fear is not irrational. Every change brings loss. When you leave a job, you lose the comfort of familiarity. When you end a relationship, you lose a part of your identity. When you start something new, you lose the safety of routine. This loss, even when it's for the better, is terrifying. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard called this the dizziness of freedom. He believed that when we stand on the edge of change, we experience a kind of existential vertigo. The infinite possibilities stretch out before us, and with them comes the terrifying responsibility of choice. This is why we hesitate. This is why we avoid, because the fear of becoming is greater than the pain of staying the same. So how do we break free from this paradox? How do we start solving our own problems? The first step is awareness. You must recognize the patterns of resistance in your own mind. You must acknowledge the fear, the discomfort, and the excuses that hold you back. Second, you must cultivate self-compassion. Understand that you are not alone in this struggle. Even the greatest minds in history wrestled with their own challenges. Be kind to yourself in the process, recognizing that change takes time. Finally, you must take action, no matter how small. Start with one step, one decision, one move toward the life you want to create. Over time, those small steps will build momentum and the fear will begin to fade. The journey is not easy, but it is possible, and it begins with a single step.